Why do you keep encountering painful situations, even though the people and places change, yet the feeling of hurt repeats exactly the same? It's not bad luck or coincidence. It's a call from your unconscious. What few people tell you is that the greatest obstacle to happiness is not the challenges life throws at you, but the wounds your mind creates and silently repeats without you realizing it. Carl Jung called this the subconscious trauma imprint. It doesn't appear overtly, yet it profoundly influences every decision you make. Who you choose to love, what you accept or reject, and even how much happiness you feel you deserve. Unless you learn to recognize it, this imprint will quietly govern your life, pulling you into old cycles of suffering. Jung noticed something almost uncanny. People repeatedly reenact old wounds, not because they seek suffering, but because the mind is trying to bring them to light for awareness. Every repeated disappointment, every relationship that ends in a familiar pattern, is an opportunity to recognize a deep wound you have never faced directly. Often, these traumas don't stem from a single major event, but from long-standing small injuries, feelings of abandonment, lack of recognition, or low self-worth. They are stored like an emotional map, guiding how you respond to the world. A friend who always feels abandoned, a partner who panics when things go smoothly, or yourself, successful yet exhausted from constantly proving your worth, are all victims of unresolved subconscious wounds. Understanding this, you begin to realize that suffering is not fate, it is the unconscious reminding you. Pay attention, look at the wound, and learn to heal from within. Once you identify the cycle, you can change the way you live, love, and choose your path to happiness. You may wonder why you keep getting caught in the same types of relationships, situations, or emotions, even as the world around you constantly changes. Carl Jung pointed out that this is no coincidence. In reality, your mind is repeating an old emotional pattern, an unrecognized wound, as if you are trapped in an invisible loop you aren't even aware of. These wounds are not always obvious. They don't appear as shocking memories or major accidents, but rather as accumulated, subtle emotional injuries, moments when you felt abandoned, overlooked, or inadequate. They gradually form an invisible emotional map, guiding how you react to the world and to those around you. For instance, a friend who always feels excluded for no clear reason, a partner who becomes anxious even when things are going well, or yourself, though accomplished, continuously exhausted from proving your value. All of these are signs of unresolved wounds held in the unconscious, shaping your behaviors and emotions. Jung believed that trauma often hides in symbols, dreams, irrational fears, and the people you are drawn to, rather than obvious events. It infiltrates habits, reactions, and even forms the identity you consider your true self. This makes it difficult to recognize that you are being controlled by the past rather than fully living in the present. Recognizing this loop is the first step to change. By observing excessive emotions, strong reactions, and asking yourself, what does this remind me of? You will see that the pain is not due to weakness or failure, but a signal of an untold story. This gives you the chance to transform suffering into self-awareness and begin breaking the cycle to live more freely and fully. Have you ever wondered why painful situations keep repeating and why you react so strongly to seemingly ordinary things? Carl Jung called this a subconscious wound, a part of trauma stored in the unconscious that shapes how you experience the world. These traumas often do not come from a single major event, but from prolonged emotional injuries, feelings of neglect, dismissal, or lack of acceptance. The strange thing Jung discovered is that humans repeatedly reenact old wounds, not because they enjoy suffering, but because the unconscious is trying to bring these experiences to light for recognition and healing. A relationship that ends in the same pattern, every repeated disappointment, is a reminder that a wound has not been faced. To decode this, Jung recommended starting with strong reactions to others, especially those that trigger discomfort, anger, or irritation. These exaggerated responses often reflect parts of yourself that have been denied or hidden. For example, a lazy coworker may trigger deep annoyance if you grew up in an environment where rest was seen as weakness. A friend who talks too much may frustrate you because you once learned that expressing emotions was unsafe. The key is to recognize these reactions without judgment, observing them as a map pointing to inner wounds. Each time you notice an overreaction and ask, What does this remind me of? You begin to separate yourself from the past. You understand that these emotions are not your fault, but traces of untold stories calling for attention. Acknowledging and confronting subconscious wounds is the first step to breaking the cycle of suffering, transforming trauma into energy, and starting to live more freely and fully. This is Jung's way of opening the door for you to find strength and authentic identity through pain. Once you begin recognizing subconscious wounds, the next step, according to Jung, is facing your inner darkness, what he called shadow work. This may seem complex, but it is intuitive. Look at what irritates or frustrates you in others, because Jung found that the traits you react to most strongly often mirror parts of yourself that were denied or suppressed. For example, being irritated by a lazy colleague may recall a childhood environment where rest was seen as weakness. Frustration at an overly open friend may reflect lessons that expressing emotions was unsafe. The intensity of your reaction is the key to locating old wounds. The stronger the reaction, the closer it is to unresolved parts. Shadow is not bad. It is the part pushed out of awareness because it was unacceptable in the past. These parts contain pain, but also energy and life. Trauma exists here like a locked door, hiding parts of yourself you have lost. By learning to observe without judgment, you create space between past and present where you can choose rather than be controlled by old pain. Start with complete honesty. Observe all exaggerated emotional reactions for a week: anger, shame, panic, envy, and record the circumstances, people involved, and memories they evoke. When you realize these reactions are not present moment issues, but come from the past, you see that you are not broken. You are carrying an untold story. Recognizing the shadow is a turning point. When you observe the darkness without judgment, the unconscious begins to cooperate instead of resist. You understand that every strong reaction is a signal, an opportunity to explore, learn, and reclaim lost parts of yourself. This is the foundation for gradually breaking the cycle of suffering, transforming pain into strength, and opening the path to conscious, free living. Even after identifying your shadow, your mind will attempt to pull you back into old patterns. Jung explains that the reason you get stuck in repeating emotional situations is the existence of complexes, a psychological cluster of memories, emotions, beliefs, and bodily responses stored around an old wound. When a complex is triggered, you feel taken over. Calm one moment, then suddenly small, guilty, or panicked, like returning to childhood. A colleague's criticism may make you feel like a 12-year-old, weak and worthless. A delayed message from a partner may trigger panic, even though rationally you know they're just busy. A canceled plan may make you feel abandoned, though betrayal never occurred. Ironically, the unconscious protects these complexes even as they cause suffering. For the unconscious, it's survival strategy. If you learned as a child that retreating kept you safe, your mind maintains this habit even if it now isolates you. If pleasing others avoids conflict, your mind may still push you excessively, even to exhaustion. Jung does not advise fighting complexes, but observing them like a scientist observes wildlife. When you recognize, this reaction is not my present self, but an old complex acting, you create a gap between past and present. In that moment, you can choose. You are no longer compelled to act according to old pain. A practical tip: when a strong reaction arises, pause and silently say, "This emotion belongs to the past, not me." Recognizing bodily traces, rapid heartbeat, shallow breathing, flushing, is the fingerprint of a complex. When noticed, you cannot ignore them and begin moving toward true freedom. Even after recognizing your complexes and shadow, there is a deeper layer many never touch. The subconscious wound is not just something to fix, but a gateway to latent power. Jung called this the gold in the darkness. Every part of yourself you have suppressed, along with pain, contains life energy, creativity, and authentic identity. Emotions you once avoided, anger, sadness, fear, can become tools to establish healthy boundaries, nurture empathy, and connect deeply with others. Pain is not just what harms you, but where your lost self waits to be reborn. Jung likened the wound to a cave. From outside, it looks dark, cold, and dangerous, but inside it hides your treasure: energy, life, and freedom. Most people never find this treasure because they fear facing inner darkness. Shadow work is not avoidance. It is learning to enter the cave without getting lost, with curiosity, courage, and self-compassion. When you observe patterns, recognize shadow, and notice complexes in real time, you begin freeing yourself from trauma's control. The next step is asking, what part of me has this wound hidden? If you felt shame expressing needs, reclaim the right to ask for help. If you were punished for speaking up, reclaim your voice. If you had to become invisible to stay safe, reclaim the right to be fully seen. This process does not happen in a day. It is a journey home to yourself, step by step, restoring lost parts, healing, and becoming more whole. Jung believed the ultimate goal is not perfection, but consciousness, making the unconscious your ally and rewriting your life story. When achieved, relationships change, choices shift, and life purpose becomes clear. Your wound ultimately is not an ending, but the beginning of a stronger, freer version of yourself. As you go through Jung's full journey, from recognizing shadow, observing complexes, identifying repeating patterns, to uncovering parts hidden by wounds, you begin to realize a powerful truth. Trauma is not the end, but the start of a stronger, freer self. Making the unconscious conscious is key. When you realize that your exaggerated reactions, fears, or pain are not your fault, but signs of untold stories, you start breaking cycles of suffering. You can choose how to respond instead of being ruled by the past. Every intense emotion becomes a signal, helping you understand yourself and guide your life. This journey not only changes how you live, but also how you love, connect, and perceive others. As you reconnect with hidden parts of yourself, you reclaim your voice, the right to express needs, and the right to be fully seen. Relationships become more authentic, life choices freer, and purpose clearer. Jung emphasized that the ultimate goal is not perfection, but consciousness and wholeness, creating harmony between past and present, unconscious and conscious. When achieved, wounds that once caused suffering become resources, strength, and pathways for personal growth. So if you see yourself repeating patterns of suffering, don't see it as failure or fate. View it as a call from the unconscious, guiding you towards self-awareness, healing, and a better, fuller version of yourself. By stepping through darkness and exploring hidden parts, you not only liberate yourself, but open the door to a conscious, free, and vibrant life.